I'm making this indoors because there's way too many mosquitoes outside, and anytime I sit outside the past few days, I just get completely eaten. So I'm just gonna have to do it inside for now. For those of you who always tune in to my streams, and were wondering, because I usually do my streams, I would have done one yesterday, but I have to apologize because I'm just very busy right now. I'm actually in the process of moving, so I will be streaming in the future. It just might not be every week, I can't do it all the time, right? Especially right now. So this time I wanted to talk about my experience with, I've lived on a farm for almost 11 years now, ever since I was, 12, and I recently spent about just under a year in the city, and I kind of wanted to give my experience on both, as someone who has lived on a farm for a really long time. I feel like that's a unique experience that not a lot of people get to try, I guess, especially nowadays. And then I guess being able to go to the city, I'll be able to give you a farm boy's perspective on, the differences and try to give as much perspective as I can. So when I went to the city, I was in a studio condo, which is basically one room, but it was a new one. So the price was affordable and decent, but thankfully it was very new, and it was cheap because of the size. But I'm not really, or I ended up not being someone who really cares about that. I actually enjoyed the minimal space. So it was a lot less space than I'm used to, because I'm used to being in a normal house, on a farm, with a lot of space everywhere, outside and whatnot. I have a porch, driveway, all that. Living in the city in a little box, in the sky, I would, going into it, I thought I was going to be claustrophobic, but I actually wasn't. And I think that's because I was in I was like midtown, so I wasn't downtown, but I was able to literally walk outside and go to get groceries, and well, not groceries, because there wasn't an actual grocery store, but there was little corner marts and little corner grocery outlets. So yeah, there was groceries. It wasn't like a Whole Foods or something, but it was, I mean, you could get everything that you need just across the street. And, you know, you get coffee, you go to a, like a pizza place or something, go get food. Like, living in Midtown versus downtown, that was a really nice experience because it wasn't super loud. It was actually very quiet, but at the same time, it was very accessible. There was just so much, like you could just, everything that you needed was basically down the block. I really can't complain about my experience. The reason I had to come back is because I had a remote job that I originally allowed me to go try to live in the city, and that I lost that job, and so I had to come back. But if I was able to keep the job, I would stay. Because I did enjoy it, and I was adjusting to the environment. Yeah, I really liked the novelty or the efficiency and convenience of it all, like the public transit and just being able to walk everywhere too. Being able to, you kind of are able to choose how much you walk and how much you take transit. You know, you can walk as much as you want, as you can, and then you can take transit the rest of the way if there's a bus that comes by. Like buses come, all the time, down the street. Because I could walk from my place, I could walk 30 minutes, and then I'm into downtown, and I could be in downtown, and if I didn't want to walk 30 minutes, I could just hop on a bus on the way, walk half the way, whatever. And I really did enjoy that type of life, when it lasted, of course. And I guess I'm kind of reminiscing about it because it was a good time, and I was able to adjust. I would say there are two things that I had to deal with that were hard, or harder, and yeah, just things that I have to deal with on a day-to-day basis that don't ever get better, but I just have to deal with it. And the first thing was just the people. Just you have to be aware of your surroundings and know that you are in a statistically more of a dangerous situation living in the city because you're so close to everyone. Even in my living space, it's like I'm living, like my room is right next to a bunch of other rooms, and I don't know those people, and I wasn't used to that. I mean, hell, like living in the city, you're surrounded by all these people. Whether it's a good thing or a bad thing, I would say it's a good thing as long as you stay safe, but you experience so much life because you experience real shit because you're just surrounded by so many people. Like I literally had, I'm not even lying, there was someone died on my, like a few doors down, on my floor. I heard, from what I heard from the door, I unfortunately, a woman came home from being out with her friend, and she found her husband had choked on something and was on the floor, dead. And the paramedics came up because she was screaming and running around. And I heard them say like, oh, you know, his face is blue, and you know that means that he choked on something, and it's actually crazy shit that I would never have ever experienced in my life if, like, you know, I'm it was a horrible experience, and I felt obviously horrible, and it was a very traumatic for the people involved. But that's, I don't know, that's life. And if you live in the city, I think that's the type of stuff that you kind of have to deal with. And you can't, I think living in the city, you can't avoid anything. I think living out in the boonies, it's easy for people to avoid or ignore things about life. And when you're in the city, you can't do that because you're literally forced to see life through other people around you. Like, you can choose to not live a certain way or to avoid certain things, but that doesn't mean other people around you aren't. You know, they're gonna live their life how they want, whether you like it or not. You know, I've seen, I mean, even to the extreme of like drug addicts out on the street. Like, you're walking down the street and there's someone with a crack pipe like right next to you, and I don't know, I think it's really necessary for people to, like, obviously I'm saying my examples are extremely horrible, but I think that you have to, I think in order to develop as a person, and this helped me personally a lot, become who I am now and who I will be in the future as I develop even more, you have to experience that type of living situation, at least for a period of time. I would say, you know, because I lived there for a year, I would say you need to live in the city for at least 6 months to a year, in my opinion, to grow as a person, as a young person. I think that it's really important to have that experience because you just are exposed to a lot of things that you aren't taught, and or that you might have been taught but you just don't. You need the real experience. You need it right in front of your face to really hit, you know. I don't think that I have ever really seen mortality and how precious life is in the way that I do now, ever since that day that I was forced to experience someone finding their loved one dead on the floor, a few feet away from me, and how horrible it is for that person. Yeah, it's just crazy. It's like, and all the things that, oh, what could have happened, like if that person was more careful when they were eating or whatever they were doing, or if their partner had come, if they hadn't gone out that day. Like, it's just crazy, like all the little things where you literally can't, you can try your best, but you know, you can't control everything. You can just, you try your best and you pray, and that's all you can do at the end of the day. You know, so it's lessons like that I never would have learned staying here on the farm. I never would have developed in the way that I did living in the city. And so I owe that to the city and the city life. I think cities are, I think living in the city is something that everyone should do at least once in their life if they want to grow as a person and fully develop, I think. I don't know if you can fully develop out in the middle of nowhere. I think it might be impossible because you're just not going to get, because the other thing is like the types of people and the backgrounds that you just bumping into people, or I'm on the subway and someone starts talking to me, and they're from like, I don't know, Russia or Ukraine or Afghanistan or some like random country, and they're like, they either moved from that country, like their families from that country, or like they're directly from their homeland starting their own life for their new family. It's like first generation people or second generation. Like it's not, that's stuff that I haven't been exposed to where I'm from, because where I'm from, everyone grew up here. You go to the grocery store here, everyone's grown up here. Their grandparents grew up here. Everyone's either white or black, you know. That's how it is in America. You're either white or black or Mexican, or sometimes Asian, you know. And there's not as many backgrounds as, and when I say in America, I just mean in most of America, right? Outside of the city. You know, and especially in more rural areas, it's just, it's, and not to say that this is bad, but it's like, me as a person, I want to grow and learn. And I think the quickest way to do that is to interact with people directly in person that are from completely different like backgrounds. I think that's interesting. Not to say that I would automatically agree with those people on everything or take everything they say as truth, but I like the experience. I just like that experience. It's like, okay, this is a real person talking to me, and they're from this real country, rather than like it all being on my screen, you know, or on the news or something. I do think, you know, there's a stigma about people who live in the city having like certain political views or whatever, or leaning a certain way politically, or voting a certain way. That aside, because, you know, I'm not talking about politics specifically, but I think that in general, people who live in the city tend to be more tolerant of people of different backgrounds, because they literally have to deal with those people on a day-to-day basis. And so they have probably encountered a person from this culture or this country or this demographic that was a good person, because we're, you know, like you experience humans rather than stereotypes and demographics and cultures and blah blah blah. Like you're dealing with actual humans rather than like looking at statistics and stuff, because, you know, I love statistics, and I think statistics are great, and pattern recognition is one of our greatest gifts as human beings, but I think that you need to understand that there are good people everywhere. And it doesn't matter, like there is not one place where there are only bad people. There is not one religion, there is not one culture, there is not one class or region or race of people where there are only bad people. Like, if you have that mentality, it's because you have never gone outside. Because you have to not interact with real people in order to think that. And I think that's yeah, like that's all I'll say on that. Like, you, in order to understand, and that's why it, you know, and that's why I'm not taking a, because that's why everything is so complex, I guess. That's the only thing I'll say about, like, politics or policies, or, you know, what to do about this or what to do about that. It's complex because you have to deal with statistics, but there are also, you also have to learn, or you also have to consider the people who do not fit the stereotype or statistic or whatever, you know. That's with dealing, that's just how humans are. Like, that's why societies are hard. That's why integration is hard. It's hard. And I think that I experienced why it's hard, living in the city, because there's good and bad people everywhere. And they all come from different places and beliefs and backgrounds and stuff. And you have to consider all of this shit when, like, making policies or allowing certain people in or out or whatever. So, yeah. So the one thing, so I said earlier that there were two things that I had to deal with on a day-to-day basis that were, you know, I just have to deal with it, and it's not really something that I have to deal with on the farm. So one was just people in the sense of danger, because obviously there's all sorts of shit everywhere, because it's a you know, the more people there are, the higher the crime rate, because that's just statistics, you know, and there's all different types of people, and they're all crammed into one area, and naturally all the crime is going to be in that area rather than spread out over, you know, like, you just have less space, and therefore you're going to have more incidents of things. So you just have to be, you know, there's been a lot of sketchy encounters that I've had, and I just had to be aware and safe, and been able to, like, distance myself from situations and whatever. It's just like, you just have to be a little bit more aware of your surroundings at all times. A little bit, even when you're at your place, especially if you're, like, in a condo or an apartment or whatever, you just have to be careful. Like, you have to backtrack and check stuff, and just be mindful. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that, because I think we need to be mindful always. So there's that. And the second thing that I had to deal with that's a little bit more personal is that I had to... I talked about this in another video. The video I talked about this in was the video about grounding yourself in nature. There's a there's a level of, there's like this feeling, this phenomenon that happens when you have a lot of space, a lot of empty space, and a lot of quiet space, and a lot of space between you and everything else, where your mind feels like it kind of opens up. And when I'm in the city, my mind was here because everyone else is around me. I don't know if this makes sense. Like this, obviously, that this can be more of a, you could take this as an esoteric thing, or you could just take this as just like a physical noise sensory thing. But when I was in the city, I could feel my mind was like here inside my brain, because I had to accommodate for everything that's going on outside of me. There's all these people, everyone's moving around, everything's happening. And I liked that, and I disliked that at the same time. I liked it because it makes you, when you're in the city, you feel like you're a cog in a machine, but in a good way, because it can kind of, when there's a lot of things going on around you, and everyone's going to work, everyone's getting things done, everyone's moving, everyone's doing something. When everyone's doing stuff, it makes you more inclined to do things too, which is good, because then you can like be successful and do things in your life and like make money and stuff. But I think I guess the drawback of that is sometimes I guess that's where I kind of felt a bit claustrophobic, because my mind was in my head, and when I came back, my mind was able to expand again, because there's all this space and emptiness and quietness. You know, I'm able to like sit on the porch or where I make my videos, and my mind expands, and it goes from my head to the horizon and behind me and around. And that's just a feeling I get. And it's a peaceful, relaxing, like meditative mind, like it's like a mindful state of being. And I think that's a lot harder when you're in the city, at least when I was there, and what I was, because I was also dealing with a lot of shit too, so, you know, there's that. But yeah. But you know, that's why good cities have parks and stuff, so you can at least, or you can go to like Uptown or Midtown. You know, like I said, I was in Midtown, so it was pretty, you know, there were cars and stuff all the time, but it was pretty quiet. You know, I was pretty high up too, so it wasn't very, but that feeling, that feeling only happens when I'm like on the farm. That mind expansion feeling, because I think that it's because there's literally nobody around. And I don't know what type of phenomenon that is, but it definitely happens to me. And there's a difference. I'm just trying to think of if there's anything else, but I think I said everything. That's pretty much my experience. You know, I guess I didn't really talk about the farm, but I guess that's because it's kind of straightforward. It's like you get up, you go to work, you come home, you relax. You have to drive everywhere, so you don't go out often. You can take walks if you want. But in my experience, I don't really normally take walks. I would take walks when I was in the city because there would be places to go, to see, just walking down. I feel like maybe it's just because I grew up here, but on the farm, I mean, the trees are nice, but there were trees in the city too. And with the city, there's just more things to see, and with the farm, it's just hot and there's bugs everywhere, like literally everywhere. So I'd rather just chill inside if I'm on the farm, or just sit, I would say, because the air quality is a different matter, because obviously the air quality is better on the farm, and I did miss that, and I came back and oh man, the smell of the air was so much better. But I would say, air quality aside, your lifestyle is healthier in the city because you're walking around everywhere you have to. Ironically, on the farm, I don't really walk. I walk to work, but that's like 5 minutes. Or it's like 5 minutes of my day walking, and then I'm just standing, lifting things, hurting my back, etc., etc. But there's no cardio. It's just lifting things, and I would say cardio is more important, longevity wise and health wise. If you're just standing around all the time, and not walking around a lot, because we have buggies and stuff, like to drive around the farm to do the chores and stuff. There's not a lot of walking. So in that regard, I would say I would prefer the city, because you just naturally walk all the time, and I lost so much weight when I was in the city. Yeah, I was so out of shape when I first got there, and I completely transformed into a different person just because of all the walking that I did. I lost like 20 pounds, I think, maybe even more. Just from just the lifestyle change. So. But, there's pros and cons to everything. I think everyone should experience both rural life and city life. I would say if you live in the city, if you're like financially able to, I would recommend you to try to do find a farm that does like volunteer work and work a summer or something. Like, go live, because there's farms, there's rural areas that have like businesses where you can do labor for a place to stay. Like, you don't get paid, but you get food and rest. Like, you get food and bed, and then you just do that for a summer, 6 months, if you're able to. And I think that because I think a lot of people, at least in my eyes, because I'm coming from the farm, a lot of people in the city probably have like rose-tinted glasses when they see the farm life. They're like, oh, it's like the butterflies and the clean air, and the animals prancing around, and oh, like the sunshine and all that. But you might, if you actually experience it, you might realize that it's just it's a way of life that is very, very slow and inefficient and costly, and costly in terms of like time. Like you gotta, man, if you want to go to the grocery store, that's like at least 20-minute drive, 15-20-minute drive, if you want to go into civilization. There's like no services out here at all. If you break a leg, you have to go, like it's just that everything is just so, it's so much slower, it's so much not available. It's dirty. Like it's so hard to keep things clean. Like there's bugs, there's so many issues that arise with the upkeep of the farm, and it's always, you're basically like you're like a slave to the land in a way, because you know, you wake up and there's a new problem and you gotta fix it, or else you're cooked. Your business is over, you know, because you need everything to run properly. You know, and you're dealing with animals, and sometimes they just die for no reason, even though they're healthy, or they get out, and they get out in the street, and you gotta chase them back. You know, like it's so time consuming. It's like, if you come from an environment that is built on efficiency, just know. But I think that that's why it's important to experience it and see for yourself what it's like, just to see. I think it's important. I think it's important for you as a person to see another side of the coin, and vice versa. So that's why I wanted to make this video, because I want you to kind of hear my experience, and to have maybe a inspiration to maybe go and if you can, experience something different, a different way of life, a different type of living that you've never experienced before, because you will only grow from that. So, yeah.